You know, neighbors come in all shapes and sizes. I remember a story when my family moved into our childhood home, and there were 6 Learys. It was funny to watch in hindsight because my dad later said that once the Leary kids moved in, all the neighbors were peeking out their window. And after we settled in for a while, you could see how the Leary boys sort of ran through people's flower gardens, through their yards, playing all kinds of games because that's just what kids did then. This weekend, the gospel is the Good Samaritan. The question is asked, you know, who is my neighbor? Who are we supposed to reach out to? Who are we supposed to show love to? You know, there's 2 virtues I wanted to speak to you about this weekend. The first is fraternal charity. Charity meaning I care for you, and I care so much for you that I'm willing even to sort of correct you. Fraternal correction is when an individual is doing something that is wrong, that is obviously wrong, that affects others, and at the same time you're willing to speak to them privately, charitably, and spiritually, prayerfully, to address an issue that maybe they've never addressed or really considered. Charity is the best way to love a neighbor. To love your neighbor is to sacrifice for them. It's to pick them up from the burden of their pain or their sinfulness and to put them on the burden, on the beast of burden of your prayer, and bring them to a place where they can rest, Jesus Christ. So in other words, you and I are always sort of surrounded by people that maybe are going through some tough times because of their own actions, or their own choices. And to correct them does not mean that we reject them. To correct means to love them. But to love them ultimately with the heart of Christ. 2 things to think about this weekend. Number 1, do you know somebody in your life that's going through something that may be struggling, but that they're bringing their issues to you or their problems to you, and the Lord is putting in your heart to speak to them, to say, you know, maybe we could work on this, or maybe there's something you could address in your heart in this way. The second thing to think about is when this issue is brought to your attention, is to not speak about it in a manner that can be embarrassing or can break the seal of the charity, the fraternal charity that God has spoken to you in your heart. This week, I just want you to pray about that. Who is my neighbor? You know, the Leary boys, we used to run through everybody's gardens. We were a loud family. And it wasn't until we ultimately began to be welcomed by the people around us that we began to be good neighbors to them. We felt sort of isolated because we were rejected, because we were judged. But when somebody came up to my dad and said, you know, it may be that your boys are just running through flower beds, or that your boys are hitting wiffle balls into the neighbor's backyard and they're just climbing over the fences and destroying everything around it. And my dad finally said, no wonder we don't have many good friends. No wonder somebody hasn't reached out to us. So pray for the grace to know what is fraternal charity, to love them as a brother or sister in Christ. And secondly, that if you're called on to address something with a brother or sister in Christ, to do so, this fraternal correction, with the love of God. Pray for that. It will cost you. It will cost you 2 small coins, as the gospel says. It will cost you something sacrificially. But what you will gain is a person who has come to know and be loved by the heart of Christ. Remember, this is more than a sermon. It's more than a thought. It's the reality of Jesus Christ. God bless you.